Hi everyone. In this video, we are going to discuss about static keyword with example, uses of static keyword, purpose of static keyword, and at the end, I will give quick review on static keyword. All points I will cover in this video in simplified way so that you will get clear view about it. So just keep watching till end. You will clearly understand it. Okay. So let's begin. So first let's understand what are the keywords. So in Java, keywords are the predefined words or we can say reserved words that Java provides us to use it in programming to make program more efficient. And each keyword has its own meaning and functionality. There are more than 50 keywords are there in Java and one of them is static keyword and static keyword also has its own meaning and functionality. So static keyword is a keyword in Java which is used for memory management. So how it is used for memory management, I will show you practically further in this video. But before that, let's see where we can use static keyword in programming. So in Java, we can use static keyword with variables, methods, blocks, and inner classes or nested classes. And remember, in Java, we cannot use static keyword with outer classes and local variables. Local variables are the variables which are declared inside body of method. So always keep in mind we cannot use static keyword with local variables and outer classes. Okay. So first let's understand how we can use static keyword with variables directly through an example. It will be easy to understand. So first I will explain what problems developer had to face without using static variables and then I will explain how we can resolve that problems using static variables. Okay. So for that, first we will need to create a class that already I have created and it's class employee with instance variables int employee ID, string employee name and string CEO of company. Okay. Now initialize these instance variables. That means let's assign values to these instance variables. And in Java, we can initialize instance variables using constructor. So let's create constructor. So we can write employee and pass here int employee ID, string employee name, string company CEO. And right here, employee ID equals to employee ID. Similarly, you can write employee name equals to employee name. Employee, sorry, CEO equals to company CEO. So our constructor is ready. Now let's create employee class object. So for that, let's create another class to put executable code such as main method and all. Always put executable code in separate class. It would be good to manage large code. Okay. And it's suppose class test. And let's create employee class object inside main method. And here we can write employee. Suppose employee 1 equals to new employee. And pass here values that will match to these constructor parameters. Okay. So employee 1 ID suppose 101. Employee 1 name suppose ABC. Okay. And CEO suppose we can write SG. Now we will need to create one method inside employee class to print employee data on console. And it's suppose void display method. And right here SOP and here you can write employee ID. Same we can write for employee name and CEO. So employee okay. All right. So the job of this method is to print employee data on console. Okay. All right. Now call this display method from main method using employee class object. So employee1 dot display. And let's create one more employee class object. Employee2 ID suppose 102 and employee2 name suppose PQR and CEO will be same and it's SG. And again call this display method using employee2 object to print employee2 data on console. So we can write employee2 dot display. Okay, all right. Now let's run the code, but before that, let's understand execution flow of program. So when I will execute this program, then the execution of program will start from this main method. Then first program control come to this and employee1 object will create with its instance variables because these instance variables are belong to an objects. So whenever employee class object will create, then automatically instance variables also will allocate under each employee object. And then JVM allocate memory for these instance variables employee ID, employee name and CEO inside heap memory. And then this parameterized constructor get call and will invoke this constructor. And after that, this employee ID 101 will set to this local variable employee ID and this name ABC will set to this local variable employee name. And this value SG will set to this local variable company CEO and then will assign to this instance variable employee ID, employee name and CEO accordingly and will store on its reserve space inside heap memory. Then program control come to this and this display method get call and will invoke this display method. Then control come to this and this employee ID, employee name and CEO will print on console. Then control come back over here and again employee2 object will create and this constructor get call and will invoke this constructor and these values will set to this a local variable employee ID, employee name and CEO accordingly and then assign to these instance variables employee ID, employee name and CEO and then will store on its reserve space inside heap memory. Then control come over here and this display method get call and will invoke this display method and then control come to this and employee2 data will print on console. So let's check it out. Is it working correctly or not? So let's run the code. Let's see. You can see here we have got employee 1 and employee 2 data successfully. But if we notice here, CEO is same or common for both the employees. So if there are thousands of employees are working in same company, then obviously the CEO will be same for all that thousands of employees, right? That means, see here, you will need to write same code for thousands of employee objects, right? Basically here we are repeating same code thousands of times and due to this a repetition of code will increase and it considered as a bad programming practice because it can affect on performance of a program, right? So this is the first problem. And second problem is at the time of execution, JVM will allocate memory for this instance variable CEO thousands of times. Even it is same for all the employee objects and due to this a lots of memory will consume and somewhere memory issue can create, right? And third problem is if in future company want to appoint a new CEO, then you will need to replace old CEO name in new one, right? And for that you will need to perform changes in all employee objects. Like now see here, old CEO is SG, right? And we have to replace it. But we cannot make changes here because these constructors are already being used in a program. We cannot modify it. And if we modify it, it will affect entire code of a program. And hence we will have to write separate code for it like this. Employee1 dot CEO equals to and new CEO suppose DG. Okay. Now employee 1 CEO is DG because we have replaced it. Same we will need to write for employee 2 object. So we can write employee 2 dot CEO equals to DG. Similarly, same code you will have to write for thousands of employee objects. So it can be time consuming as well as lengthy and complicated to perform changes for all thousands of employee objects, right? So these are the problems that you can face without using static variables. Now let's understand how we can resolve all these problems using static variables. So let's concentrate here. So instead of doing all these steps, simply declare this variable CEO as static. So just write here static. Now this variable CEO is static variable. And let's assign value to it, and it's suppose SG. So CEO of company is SG. And remember, static variable is always belong to a class, not belong to an object. And therefore, we do not need to assign value to it using constructor. Because constructor is used to assign value to the objects or variable or instance variables. So just remove this, and this as well. We do not need of it. Because I have already assigned value to the static variable at the time of variable declaration. Now let's run the code. But before that, let's understand execution flow of program so that you will clearly understand how static variables are work internally, how they get stored, where they get stored and all. Okay. So listen carefully. But before that, let me comment out this line and this line as well. Okay. All right. So during execution, first employee class will load into a memory by the help of class loader of JVM. And then at first, JVM allocate memory for static variables in class area known as metaspace. So metaspace is a class area where all static members are stored. But remember, before Java 8, static variables was stored in special area called as PermGen, that is permanent generation. But due to some major changes in memory model, Java 8 onwards, static variables get stored in class area known as metaspace. Okay. So first class will load. After class loading, JVM allocate memory for this static variable CEO in metaspace. And this value SG will store in its reserve space. And remember, memory allocation for static variables happens only once at the time of class loading. After that, control of the program goes to the main method. So first program control come to this, and employee 1 object will create with his instance variables employee ID and employee name. And JVM allocate memory for employee 1 object and its instance variable employee ID and employee name on heap area. And remember one thing, JVM won't allocate memory for this variable CEO on heap area, because now this variable is static variable and static variables are stored in metaspace, right? And then this parameterized constructor get called and will invoke employee class parameterized constructor. And then value 101 will set to this local variable employee ID, and this name ABC will set to this local variable employee name. And after that we'll assign to this instance variable employee ID and employee name, and will store on its reserve space on heap area. And then program control come to this, and this display method get called and will invoke this employee class display method. Then control come to this, and employee ID employee name will print on console, and the value of CEO, that is SG, which is stored in a metaspace, will retrieve and print on console. After that, control come back over here and same process will happen. That is, employee 2 object will create with its instance variable, and JVM allocate memory for instance variable employee ID and employee name on heap area. Then this constructor get call and will invoke this constructor, and these values 102 and PQR will set to these local variables employee ID and employee name. and then we'll assign to this instance variable employee ID and employee name accordingly, and we'll store on its reserve space on heap area. And then program control come to this, and again this display method get call and will invoke this display method, and then control come to this, and employee ID and employee name will print on console, and value of CEO, that is SG, will retrieve from metaspace and will print on console. After that, control come to this and program will terminate after completing the main method. Now let's run the code and let's see. You can see here we have got employee 1 and employee 2 data successfully without any compilation error. So if we notice in a complete scenario, a single copy of static variable CEO gets shared among all employee objects. JVM doesn't need to create it each time on heap during object creation. It creates once and gets stored in metaspace and commonly gets shared among all the objects. It means JVM doesn't need to allocate memory for it on heap area each time during object creation, and due to this a lot of memory will save, and therefore it is said that static keyword or static variables helps to save memory, or we can say static keyword is used for memory management, and this is the main purpose of static keyword. So basically static keyword helps in memory management to make program memory efficient. Clear? And as I said before, in future, if company appoint new CEO, then for that, does we need to perform changes for all the employee objects? See here, we don't need to perform changes in all employee objects. We just need to change value of static variable like this. So we can write employee dot CEO equals to, and new CEO suppose DG. And remember, here I have used class name employee to access static variable CEO, because static variable is a class level variable, that is it belong to a class only, and therefore we will need to use class name to access it. We don't need to create or use any object to access it. We can directly access it using class name. Clear? That's it, nothing we have to do. Now let's run the code. Let's see, will we get correct output or not. You can see here a new CEO is DG, which is commonly get shared among all the objects. We do not need to change it for all employee objects. So in this way, we can easily change value of static variables without affecting entire code of a program. Clear? And you can see here, there is no repetition of code because we have declared commonly used variable CEO as static, so that all objects can share it, and due to doing this, code repetition problem also get resolved. So in this way we can use static variable in program to make program more memory efficient. Now I am giving quick review on static variables. So first point to be remembered is static keyword in Java is a keyword which is used for memory management. That already we have discussed how it is used in memory management. And second point is main purpose of static keyword is it helps to make program more memory efficient. And next point is static variables are class level variables. That is static variables are belong to a class, not belong to an object. And next point is value of static variable commonly get shared among all the objects. We do not need to create it for every object. And next point to be remembered is since Java 8, static variables get stored in class area known as metaspace. But before Java 8, it was get stored in permgen, that is permanent generation. And the next point is memory allocation for static variables happens only one in metaspace at the time of class loading by JVM. That is, only single copy of static variable is created throughout a program. And next point is static variables can be accessed using class name. That is, we will need to use class name to access static variables. We don't need to create or use any object to access it. We can directly access it using class name. That's it. This is all about static variable. In next video, I will explain how we can use static keyword with methods. Okay. Now I am going to end this session. So keep learning, keep growing, and thank you so much for watching.